Hey, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm gonna do a little like in-depth video on simple syrups. I feel like I've been getting a lot of questions on just like how to make them, how to make flavored ones, like what are the measurements, all that kind of stuff. So there is like a very easy rule of thumb that I use to make simple syrups. I'm gonna show you today how to do a regular simple syrup, a fruit or vegetable simple syrup, an herb simple syrup, and a spiced simple syrup. A little bit of everything, and then like the rule of thumb for each of those you should be able to use for like any sort of simple syrup you want to make ever. For a regular simple syrup, all it is equal parts sugar and water. So I did a third cup of each of those, and then this just goes on the stove. And I'm putting it at like a low medium heat, and you're going to just let that simmer on the stove until the sugar dissolves. It's very simple. And I'm just going to stir it occasionally. You don't need to stir it the entire time it's simmering, but just occasionally, especially with flavored simple syrups, you want to make sure you're just incorporating all of the flavors. So our syrup is just very, very lightly simmering, and that sugar is definitely starting to dissolve. It's been probably like 5 minutes that our simple syrup has been simmering. So I'm going to turn the heat off and just remove that simple syrup from the heat completely. And we're gonna let it cool off completely still in the pot, which will be more important once we get to the flavored simple syrups. And I'll tell you why when we get there. Our simple syrup has mostly cooled off. So all you do is just store it in a little like jar or bottle of any sort in the fridge, and this will last like up to 4 weeks. Next, let's get into the flavored simple syrup. So I'm going to do, for the sake of this video, a raspberry simple syrup. We're going to start with the same thing we did for the regular simple syrup. So I'm doing a third cup sugar, a third cup of water, and then for fruits and veggies, the rule of thumb that I use is I do half of the amount of raspberries that I did of sugar and water. So in this case, I'm doing, it's half of a third. I should have used half cups for this scenario. So I'm doing about half the amount of raspberries. What I always do for fruits and veggies is I muddle the flavoring that we're using, because I really want all of that juice and pulp, any extra flavor that I can get, I want it in there. Same thing, low heat, and we're just going to let that simmer as that sugar dissolves. Okay, it's been a few minutes and all of our sugar has fully dissolved, but with flavored simple syrups, I prefer to let it simmer for another like 3 to 5 minutes after the sugar is dissolved, because I really want all of that like fruit flavor or whatever flavor you're using to really get like heated up into that syrup. So I'm just gonna put it all the way down to a very low heat, and I'm gonna let it simmer for another like 5 minutes, and then we will come back. I'm going to, again, completely remove this from the heat, and we're going to let it fully cool with the raspberries still in it, because that flavor is going to continue to extract from the fruit as the syrup cools down. Probably gonna take about 20 minutes to cool, so we'll be back. What we're gonna wanna do is strain out the raspberry pulp. I'm gonna try and do this on camera. So I just have a little fine mesh strainer over my mason jar, and I'm just slowly pouring that raspberry simple syrup into the strainer. Take like a rubber spatula and just like press down to get all of the simple syrup that you can out of there, and you've got your beautiful raspberry simple syrup. That is how to do a fruit simple syrup, and it would be the same for veggies. It's also going to be the same for herbs. I'm gonna do a nice little rosemary simple syrup, which is going to be perfect for when the holiday comes. Same thing as we did for raspberry, we're doing equal parts sugar and water. And then same thing as our like fruit and veggie rule of thumb, I'm doing half of the amount of the sugar and water of the rosemary. So I'm gonna, this is a little bit harder to do, but you can kind of just assume that like 2 of these small sprigs, and so like these ones are a lot bigger. So I'm gonna take 2 of like the small ones and kind of just assume that would be about, probably about half. So same thing, we're just putting this over low heat and letting it simmer. I'm gonna make sure that I just have like some of that sugar kind of like coated the rosemary. Again, we are just letting that go until the sugar dissolves on low heat. Once it fully dissolves, I am just going to turn it all the way down to low and let it simmer for like another 5 minutes. Same process. Our rosemary simple syrup was removed from the heat. It has now pretty much fully cooled off. I have to be very careful because I have my sweet dog laying below me. I'm just going to pour through. I'm holding it really high so you can see, but I'm just going to pour that through the fine mesh strainer. There's really not as much to strain out from this simple syrup, but just in case any rosemary leaves kind of like crumbled or came off the sprig, we just want to get those out. So here we have our rosemary simple syrup. The only one that's going to be a little bit different that we're going to do last is spices. Equal parts sugar and water. For spices, the difference is I'm not going to do half of the amount of sugar and water because I feel like for spices that tends to be a little bit too much. My rule of thumb is for every like half cup, I do 2 teaspoons of the spice. I have a 1/3 cup of sugar and water, so it's not going to equate perfectly, but I'm pretty much just going to do 1 tablespoon of our spice, which in this case I'm doing a clove simple syrup. So I'm just putting that right in. Again, this is just like a rule of thumb, so it doesn't need to be perfect. That was not like a perfect measurement. This is going to be the same exact thing as the last one. I'm just putting that on a low heat, let it simmer until the sugar dissolves, turn it all the way down to the lowest possible heat, let it simmer for another like 5 minutes, and then remove it from the heat, let it fully cool, and then strain out our spice. Last but not least, we have our clove simple syrup fully cooled off. I actually think I'm gonna move the camera down just so you can see me strain this out. And that through the strainer like we did the other syrups. There we have our clove simple syrup, all 4 of our simple syrups that we made. That's it, and hopefully this was educational and enjoyable. So, bye.